Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for episode 2 of Typewriter Talks. I am Maureen McDowell, the founder and executive director of Keep St. Pete Lit. We are a local literary arts organization located in St. Petersburg, Florida. And the idea for this program came about because I personally am a poet and have always really wanted to interview writers and kind of get inside their heads in their writing process and kind of get the deets. So I am honored and grateful to have my good friend Bob Devin Jones here. I've known Bob since 2006. I had the book release for my first poetry book, Exploring My Options, at the studio at 620, which is wild. What is that, 14 years ago now?
Yes, I was younger.
Yes, we both were.
Obviously, you were.
Yes. And so we Keep St. Pete Lit partners with the Studio 620 on our monthly book club and also with our poetry open mic. And so Bob here is not only the artistic director of the Studio 620, he is also a playwright and a writer and a director and an actor. Did I leave anything out?
Co-founder of the studio with Dave Ellis.
Yes. Rest in peace, Dave.
Yes.
So you're a man of many hats, a Renaissance man, if you will. How's that? I'm sure it's not the first time you've been called that.
No, but I've been called late for dinner as well. So.
Well, sometimes,
Or I would say, I'll take it.
I'll take it. So tell us what you're working on right now.
Well, and I have been for 10 years, over 10 years, a play, an opus, a narrative called Until the River Never Grieves. And I've written one little section of it in that Prometheus standard that you heard me share several months back that we did together. And right now, I'm honing my skills writing narratives for these grants and loans and foundation support because of our current given circumstances. But I'm always writing because I'm composing in my head. And when I'm sensible enough, I actually just write down the notes, file them away, because I don't retain things that I think about unless I write them down.
Interesting. My mom's the same way.
Yeah. So once I knew I was a writer, it was one line in wasn't in Uncle Ben's, it was in some other play, but the character says, I didn't have to walk my daddy's mile. And I said, I like the way that sounds.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I guess I'm a writer.
That one line.
That one line. That was one of many, but that's the one where I go, oh yeah, I am a writer.
Who wrote that line?
Me.
That was your line. Oh my goodness. Yes. How appropriate. I mean, my imagination just went nuts when I heard that line. Like,
yeah, and so did I.
Breaking the curses of generational families and forging your own path, and yeah.
And that the mile he walked paved the way for me. It was so full that I thought, then I guess I can call myself a writer. And certainly the first time I saw it in print, I know my eyes sweated.
So how old were you when you wrote that line?
It would have been in the 90s.
Okay. So
you
knew at that moment.
Yes. But
that was your first, and you never looked back.
No, although I became inspired to write when I encountered James Baldwin when I was going to drama school in London. And the first book of his I read was Giovanni's Room. And I don't think I knew it at the time, but that is the spark that says, oh, I wish I could do this. Oh, I wish I could do this. Having never thought at that point, I had, and then that was in my 20s. I was 22. Then I became an actor. I was an actor. I did acting for a good 10 years. Then I started, I assistant director of the play at ACT in San Francisco, and started doing that more, and then became a director, which I had never, ever, ever, ever thought that I would do that part of the profession. And then in about 89, a friend, Vinnie Murphy, we compiled a piece on James Baldwin, and that's where I thought, oh. And then it was later in the 90s that I thought, yes. And so it's a good feeling.
So wearing all those hats, does that really inform your writing process? Or do you, I mean, is your writing process morphed over the years because you have worn all those different hats? Or do you still have like a specific way that you operate, kind of similar to the very beginning? Like, you know what I mean?
Oh, yes. No, mostly what is my process, whatever I'm writing, I generally have to give it a title.
Oh, cool.
And the title comes to me by thinking about it, musing about it, walking about it, woodshedding about it. But when I have what is, even if it's a working title, I can write towards that. The characters come out of that. And it's an organizing principle for me, because I very much don't know what it's not. And I'm very much trying to discover what it is. And that thing, that journey, that mile is easy if I know that it's about Until the River Never Grieves, which means a lot of things, because it's inspired by my mother. It's inspired by these 6 Black kids, young kids who died in Louisiana
Yeah.
a decade ago. I told you this?
No.
But, oh, yeah, they died. They were at a family picnic reunion, and one of them jumped into the river. He couldn't swim. He started to drown. His cousin jumped in for him. Then he was drowning. Then another cousin jumped in. And
Oh my
another.
goodness.
Yeah. So I always thought it was going to be about that. But then losing my parents, my mother first, and then just the vicissitudes of life.
Mm-hmm.
The River Never Grieves. And I was a part of a book club, and we read this book called Lincoln in the Bardo.
Oh, I love that book. We read that for our book club too.
Yeah, and that was the key, that you can, whatever it's about, the witnesses, the thing that animates the story is the environment. If they're caryatids that come to life, or mausoleum pieces, or trees that have a comment, or so the environment is informing the story, even though it's ostensibly about these 6 young boys who drowned, but it's really about my family and my mother in particular.
This is the story you're working on, or these are the themes that you are
This is the
inspired by?
story I'm working on.
Okay.
And the first stab at it was Prometheus Standard.
Yes.
So
That event came up in my, you have memories on Facebook.
mhm.
Like it was 2 days ago, a year ago or something. Like it was sometime this week that happened, that we had that event. So it's kind of full circle that we're doing this interview now.
Yes. Well, I will see my full circle moment is just how successful you've been.
Oh.
It's being a mom, an entrepreneur, a word I don't really necessarily like, but how you've grown and worked your practice, your writing practice has been constant.
Mm-hmm.
It's the thin edge of the wedge. It's the force behind the power
It
that
is.
allows you to do all of those things and be all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just remarkable to see.
Yeah. Well, I think about that, like some people don't stick with it, they don't make a commitment. They want to be a writer, but they don't like make a commitment to being a writer, no matter at all costs. And when I was 30, I made that commitment to myself, and I've never looked back, and really everything besides needing money to get the kid raised has kind of revolved around like, how do I support myself and still have this practice regularly? So, because without the practice, I would cease to exist, I think.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure. So when you are writing, what does your typical day as a writer look like?
Well, there's no atypical day. What I've learned over decades now is that I'm like Langston Hughes in this respect. I'm a writer for hire. I can, if I have a deadline or someone says I need this, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But it is not ever my preference. I like to write generally uh, uh, late at night
Mm-hmm.
when most of the spirits are sleeping.
The witching hour.
Yeah, so that I can, because I don't want to have a feeling of, I can't write in 2 hour spurts. I can, but it's a different kind of writing.
Yeah.
If I'm tasked, I can do that, go to a coffee shop and write for 3 hours. But I prefer just either at home or in my office. I have the day free because I don't have writer's block, but the muse says, you're not ready. And,
Yeah.
and I say, I'm not ready. And he said, right, we're on the same page. Get on the same page. And then I
Yeah.
can write. And then I like to rewrite and rewrite and rewrite and say everything out loud dozens of times
Yeah.
because the rhythm.
Yeah. Agreed.
So, sometimes you just can't get on the good foot until you've worked it,
Mm-hmm.
but not with any kind of anticipation that I have to get up and go do something else.
Yeah. I get that. What are some of your major themes? Because writers. I mean, it's not always true, but a lot of writers tend to revisit the same themes over and over again. Do you have
Well,
major themes?
being a witness, which I learned from James Baldwin, that's my major theme. Until I lived in Florida, all my writing, for the most part, had to do with or some aspect of Southernness.
Mm-hmm.
My parents were both from the South. So in Still for Measure for Measure, Shakespeare play, Isabel is faced with a dilemma of something to do with her brother. I can't remember exactly what it is, but she just wants justice. And so I'm trying to always grapple with, what does that look like? This world where there is justice
Mm.
for everybody.
Yeah.
And so that's one of my themes. One is another, finding a place at the table. And what does that mean? And not being menaced while you're there at the table. So, and
You need to move your screen up a little.
oops,
Oh, there you are. Hi again.
well, see, I'm sitting in a low chair with
Yeah.
the laptop.
Modern world now. Yeah.
But if I do this again, I'm going to place it on a table where it's always stationary. So I think I have themes, but they're always through the lens and are often given names of people whom I know, family members. Like the first character I wrote for Uncle Ben's was named Flanall Jones, which is my granddaddy's name, who was a railroad man. Now, this didn't happen to him, but then I knew where I was going because I knew it was a railroad man, Flanall Jones, railroad man. I don't know if you've ever seen Uncle Ben's, but he's the one with the flapjack recipe. Um, um, or something or some music will give me my theme. When I wrote Uncle Ben's, there was a picture that haunted me of a man playing an accordion, a black man, and tears are streaming down his face as he watches the cortege of Roosevelt. And it got me thinking. One, I didn't know that Roosevelt was such a polarizing character, but for a certain community of Black people, he is the man. And here's this black man weeping, what Oprah calls the ugly cry.
Mm.
But there's so much dignity and compassion. I said, I have to sort this out. So again, how does this black man come to grieve this privilege, blue blood from, the East Coast, or, yar, 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 where's my club membership at the yacht club? So I guess those are themes of justice, themes of equality. I like to come across any moment of kindness. When I was, Dave Ellis and I and several friends took a 9-day hiking trip in Scotland. And
I feel like I knew you then.
Huh?
I feel like I knew you then.
Okay, and you maybe did. And the last mountain we climbed was Ben Nevis.
Uh-huh.
But on the 7, 8 days we were in Scotland, I wrote my first song, my only song, called You Welcomed Me Home. And I was writing it for the Manhattan Casino musical that I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that I wanted, and I knew nothing about writing a musical, just have seen several of them, that you have this one song that's sung by somebody. Maybe it's reprised at the top or the end of the first act, and then you do one more reprisal of it at the final finale song. And I had it sung by the grandmother first to her daughter. The second time you hear it is by the mother of the young Monica Raymond. She was the lead in this. And then she sings it at the end. And that's one of the highlights of my, writing life. Because another time was the way people interpret your words is so satisfying, because Julie Rowe, I wrote a piece about Icarus in this piece called Sea, water music, but it's rather than SEA, it was letter C, a water music.
Mm.
And one of the vignettes was this woman who was the paramour of Icarus. And whatever I thought I had written, and I was totally satisfied with it, she gave it back to me in such a fulsome way that it, So I'm generally writing for the rhythm of it. It's meant to be audibly heard as well as read, even though it might not be a play, because I've written many essays and such.
Yeah, I relate to that as a poet. And there are some poems that only work on the page, but then there's other poems that can, when I'm writing for an event where I know I'm going to recite the poem, I would not write a poem that wouldn't have that rhythm and work being read out loud. And then that's the thing that's good about when we do the Poetry Open Mic, for the students to see kind of how the audience reacts and where to put emphasis on certain parts and what parts don't work. And that's why I wholly recommend reading your work out loud, because I think we're drawn to rhythm as creatures, we're drawn to song. And if something doesn't, work with us, like into our ear, it will pick it up. And until you read it out loud, you wouldn't catch that necessarily. So
yeah. And for me, I don't know what I have if it's not making a joyful noise in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Even if its final iteration is not to be necessarily read out loud, but yeah. I need to jar the floor with these words. And then when they sound right, it wasn't until just 20 years ago, but up until then, I would write everything out dozens of times on a yellow legal pad, which I don't like. I don't particularly like that color, and I don't like the blue lines. But that's how I would write it out again and again and again and again until I sounded the way I needed it to live inside of me, then I would commit it to the laptop. But now
So
I don't do that anymore. Now I go right to the laptop.
yeah, that's interesting because I write by hand.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, there's a Pilot makes a V7 pen that's the perfect amount of fluidity, I guess you would say. And I found packs for 2 at the Dollar Tree. And it actually, because we're not going out, we're not shopping because of COVID, I ordered some of the Pilot again. And it's not as thick of a line as the pens that I get usually for the Dollar Tree. So I'm actually missing my 2-for-1 Dollar Tree pens, but it's just like ballpoint pens don't access the muse in the same way for me.
Mm-hmm.
Usually poetry comes through journal writing, and then I'll just be writing mundane things in the journal. I do 3 pages every day, but then a line will come, as you mentioned in the beginning. That first line, I don't have to walk a mile in my father's shoes. Is that correct?
No, I don't have to walk my daddy's mile.
I don't have to walk my daddy's mile. But that line, I'll get a line of a poem and I'll know, and I'll just chase it.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I do. My writing is tagged and chasing because I'm just, and they know who they are. And so the characters give you the given circumstances, page after page after page after page after page. So I like that, and I am a gregarious private person.
I am too. Yeah. I love that. I'm going to use that from now on. I'm a gregarious private person.
But when I write, it's just me and the page.
Yeah.
And basically the page saying, what you got?
Yeah. And
And you go, no, if you ain't got nothing, get up, go do the dishes. But if you got something, please be here. But if you ain't got anything, don't waste my time and don't waste your time. Why you gotta be so hard?
I love that you animated the page. I get it. Yeah. And you have to trust that, if the muse isn't hanging with you, that she'll come back around eventually.
Oh, and more than eventually, but she only likes to, and she's a she, when she says, if you're ready, I'm ready. But if you're not ready, well, and then she said, so what? What you got? Mm-hmm. And then I love to tell them, just sit your behind down and I will show you what I got.
You need to write that down. You need to I could totally see you having a dialogue with the muse.
Yeah, no. And she don't play. She's no second choice. Mm-mm. See me when you see me, but if you see me, you're seeing me. Mm-hmm. Another gal down the block, yeah, go talk to her. Stay down there. Because if you're there till 3 in the morning, why come home? Ooh, why can't be so hard? Okay. A friend of mine was supposed to come over and sit on the patio for some blueberry pancakes. And his girlfriend thought otherwise of it. And she said, well, I'll see you in 2 weeks. I said, is your girlfriend Black? And he said, yes. Because, what's her name? With the Empire dresses, the English woman. Mr. Darcy. Who's that?
Oh, Elizabeth, from Pride and Prejudice?
Yeah, those people.
Yeah.
They would go, oh, Mr. Darcy, please, I entreat you, don't go. But a black woman will say, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Go if you want to, but I'll see you in 2 weeks. Yeah. And I thought, there's a teaching moment and a writing moment. I mean, if I've written down half of the things I've found delicious to my ear, I would have written, that great American novel, because the way people occur in their language, just 26 characters, and you get this not only multiplicity of words and meanings, but nuance. There is a way that you can inhabit a very declarative sentence. It's where you put the punctuation if you use it, or the emphasis if you use it. Mm-hmm. But there's a way to lay on the page or lay in your head or audibly put it into the universe lets you know what you're trying to say, and
Mm-hmm.
in point of fact, what you are saying. So I love writing. It's it when I found that activity, it's I mean, I love acting and I certainly love directing. Um, but with the writing, I can paint the picture the way I see it.
Yeah, you create your own little world,
Yeah.
and hopefully it resonates with another person. And
Oh,
then,
well, and I always, that's devoutly to be wished, but I still have to paint it the way I see it.
yeah.
And so to trying to just get to that, um, and sometimes you can reach multitudes and sometimes you can just reach one, which is just fine with me.
Yeah, I remember I made a decision early on. I was like, if one person at a reading, at least one person is touched by what I read, then it's been a successful night, you know.
Yes.
And I tell that to young writers, like, you never know who's in the audience. So bring your A game to every single event, every performance, because I mean, we have gotten partnerships with American Stage and the Dolly Museum with people at events where there was maybe 5 people, and I didn't realize who was in the audience, but we still brought our A game, and like the years down the road, that person got promoted, and they always remembered that event or that experience they had, because a good story, it's about the experience. That's, you pull the reader in and they trust you enough to go on whatever to take whatever you're selling.
Sharing. We're
So
not
yeah.
selling anything.
Yeah, sharing. So, what advice would you give your younger writer self?
My younger writer
Yeah.
self.
What advice would you give?
Well, it's the same advice I would give, and I wish I had known this then,
Mm-hmm.
which I didn't, that you, more than any two things you're going to do, you have to believe in what you write.
Yeah.
Whether it's good or bad, you have to believe in the veracity of what you've placed on that page. And if we're fortunate, we get people to be a witness and they go, yes, right on, right on. Or
Mm-hmm.
some people go, I don't get it. But that's what I would give to my younger self, because I suffer from thinking, I think I told you this. Um, Alicia Harris
Mm-hmm.
wrote a magnificent poem, which I don't recall the title of, but she says she's the kind of person that brings a pen to a knife fight. And I go, that's me. That's me. So, and because I would do that, the people with the knives would say, "Oh, you don't know, no, Bobby, you shouldn't be here. You need to go somewhere else." And I go, "Okay."
What people would say that, or is that
Oh,
just metaphorically?
it's a big fat ass metaphor.
Yeah.
Although I wrote something in the 11th grade, and this woman, I'll remember, I don't remember her last name, but she got a divorce from her husband, and she called and her first name was Claire, and she legally changed her name to Claire Freenow.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote this in the 11th grade, but it was assignment, so I didn't think of myself as a writer and didn't pursue it much after that. But she thought I was good, and she said the end is in the beginning. What was that?
It's my computer. I can't figure out how to turn off the dings.
No. No.
But let's just say it was the great muse saying, "Ding, I agree with you." Go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead. So I had been encouraged and not even knowing it, but she encouraged me as a writer. I wrote a piece on, it was something in the music of James Taylor and Diana Ross, who was with the Supremes at the time. And I also had another teacher, Mr. Zorigian. And this was the 10th or 11th grade. And I wrote my first piece. And they encouraged me. Miss Claire Freenow, forget what her last name actually was, but I know when she got the divorce, she legally changed it to Free Now. And she said,
I love that.
with all good writing, the end of the resolution or where you're traveling is in the beginning. And this may or may not be true, but it's true for me. It's true for what I do. And so sometimes you apprehend the thing before you comprehend it. And so I was,
I love that.
14, and didn't really start writing till 20 years later.
So that long, so 24.
22-ish.
22-ish, yeah. That's that's the time when you're out of you've started really processing, if you leave home at the typical time. I left home at 17, but that gives you that space to kind of figure out who you are without the parentals a bit, and start making your own decisions and going, oh, this is what I kind of like. I mean, I'm still in that space where I'm like, oh, I actually like this, and I've consistently liked this. Oh, this is fascinating. Okay. But
yeah, and you must be very proud of the fact that, you not reinvented yourself, you wrote yourself into being.
Definitely 100% did that.
Yeah.
I do that every day.
Yeah. Like, look at you. Yeah. And then at some point we have to say, I guess, look at me, not in any sort of aggrandizing way, but if you can make a step in your own life that says, yes, I am, and yes, I am going to be, that's more than half of the heavy lifting that you're going to have to do and to do it. Say, I want to be a writer or a poet. How bold is that?
Yeah. To make that decision. And I say, like being a poet, I didn't actually make a decision. It's more of a calling. Like I studied pottery all in my 20s. I mean, I've always written. I just didn't take it seriously, because when something comes natural, and my family now is very drawn to the arts, but at the time my father turned me on to reading. But it wasn't until my late 20s I was just going through this huge existential crisis, and just every day, like, what is my purpose? What am I doing? Because I was interested in being a midwife, or maybe a photographer, or I could be a park ranger, or I could be this. And then, one day I got a poem and I just knew. And all those curiosities of the 40 million professions I could possibly be were because I was a poet, which really encompasses everything. Yeah. So it was, and I haven't looked back. Like, I know this is what brings me joy. So, what are your favorite authors, and what are you reading right now? And then go ahead.
I'm reading a book that I heard about through Colette Bancroft, about the boom or bust of, it's right over there. I don't want to mess up the title, about the railroads. Well, it's about the building boom in the most of the sort of eastern side of Florida. And who are my writers? Well, I got to meet August Wilson, and was like meeting William Shakespeare.
Yes.
I was at a crisis in my career. I was directing something in Sacramento, and I was going to go back to Los Angeles and get a job with Macy's or the Broadway department stores, and just matriculate up and become a buyer. I got a call from a friend, Roberta Levito. She had submitted my play, Uncle Ben's, a home-cooked Negro narrative, and it was going to be workshop at the Mark Taper Forum, which is one of the leading regional theaters in the country. And I thought, I was overwhelmed.
And you've never looked back. That was the turning point.
It was definitely the turning point. So August Wilson, I have a deep connection to him. I like all of the old masters. I don't particularly like reading plays. I just read, we were in Paris last year. I was built for Paris. And I read, Jamie purchased for me at Shakespeare and Company, another country.
Mm.
And James Baldwin, I'm not currently reading him, but he is my muse, my teacher, my ancestor, my
Mm-hmm.
all of it. And then Toni Morrison,
Mm.
I hope to be smart enough to really dine at her table, because
I
some
love
of it is
that.
so heavy. And I don't mean like heavy, she's just taking on the big stuff and
Yeah.
then renders it with these 12 characters in the English language like nobody's business. Same with Zora Neale Hurston.
Yeah.
So um, I I like some contemporary writers, but the backlog of what I'd like to read and have read, I'd like to read The Red and the Black again, Stendhal and Emile Zola, Germinal. Particularly now, we have the time to do a little bit more reading. And I have hundreds of books, so um, I think I'm going to be doing a recircle or go back into the stacks.
Yeah, that's nice when you can go, like, I'm surrounded by books besides behind me, like every corner, and where you can discover a book that you forgot that is hiding there. And then
Yeah,
just
or
like, oh my
reread,
gosh. Yeah.
because it'll tell you other things. Because I
Mm-hmm.
still feel like I was in my 30s, but I'm an elder now, so I need to deport myself with a little more gravitas.
Mm.
Just because you're supposed to have known something. If you're going to be 65 years on the planet, you should have learned something. And if you have, you're incumbent to share that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Well, you've shared a lot already. You share so much with the community. You've shared so much here with us. Um, so what would be, I tried to think of a better word. What would be your, I said before, your Bible verse for advice for writers, but what would be your, one thing you would tell a writer if you could tell them anything?
I would say, and this would be mostly because this is how it occurs for me,
Mm-hmm.
I would say listen.
Mm.
And not only to yourself, of course, but to conversations around you, the way people express themselves, but be they little people, 5, 6, 7, 8,
Yeah.
or older people. Sometimes in a phrase or in several phrases will be the whole history of their mile, their journey. And some of it will resonate in you in terms of, because even if it's in fantastical situations, we are ultimately desiring of something that tastes like truth.
Mm.
And if the characters, whatever the given circumstances, are speaking truthfully, it, it has a rhythm to it that will get inside you. And one of the ways to do that, I've found for me, is to listen. Now, sometimes I'm full on satiated about what I think about this or
Yeah.
what I think about that. And by usually listening, for
Mm.
me, I find I revel in what I didn't know and then get to celebrate what I'm trying to find out. And so that would be, so it's nothing in the mechanics of writing, but listen.
I love that. I agree. We don't listen enough. We talk and respond and wait to respond.
Oh, see, and that's the worst one. Wait to respond. Yeah. Well, see, I think this about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I remember at drama school once, all the favorite, what I assume were the favorite of this particular acting teacher. And so they were all talking, and then I said, I have an opinion and I have a comment. And they, oh, you do? And I shared it. I don't even remember the net result of it. I just remember saying to them, you're not, there's no um, invitation for me to join this conversation. I like to listen, but I am also having uh, a response, a kinesthetic response to what I'm hearing being said. I don't even remember what the conversation was. This would have been in 1979 or 1980, but I do remember saying that. Oops.
So can you share, you have some excerpts that you wanted to
Oh,
share of some of your favorite pieces of, are they literature, poems, plays?
yeah, this is my Bible because anytime I'm going to be talking about poetry, I've got to
Langston.
use Langston Hughes.
Mm-hmm.
And you could say his poems are very simple. True that. But in their simplicity, they're so nourishing. And he wrote The Negro Speaks of Rivers at 19. I'm not going to read that one.
Yeah.
And my friend Phyllis McEwen gave me this when we were doing something for the Florida Humanities Council on Zora Neale Hurston.
He's one of my favorites. Absolutely. I love his poems, the depth, but in simple language.
Yeah, and
And that's a
some,
gift. That's a gift to be able to write like that.
and this book was put together, published by Knopf, uh, for young people as old as me, and young people as young as your daughter, and old people as old as um, Jimmy Carter. And it's called The Dream Keeper. Bring me all of your dreams, you dreamers. Bring me all of your heart melodies, that I may wrap them in a blue cloud cloth, away from the too rough fingers of the world. And a dream, any dream, is extraordinary because it's a dream. It's just, it doesn't have to be needs tested. It doesn't have to be, is that practical? It's just a dream. And I don't know if other mammals dream. I suspect they do. But I know that humans dream, and they dream about things they want to do better, want to do differently, want to invent. And that is a part of the reason that us finding the language that the answer is always yes
Yeah.
has been a part of that. That's probably one of the most satisfying things of my 23 years in St. Petersburg. And we have, well, I don't know if he's going to be going now, but we have an artist, Jake Troiley, who called me on the phone. First, his mom called me, and then he says, I'm coming from school. He had a basketball scholarship at a school up south, came and said, I want to be an artist and I want to have a show at the studio. Yes. And he had another show. And now he's on his way to Art Basel in Europe.
Yeah. He's a brilliant, brilliant visual artist.
Yeah.
And
And
very, very, he seems like, I saw him on a panel at the studio, and he seems to be a very grounded young man.
he is grounded, devilishly handsome, and wickedly
Yes.
funny.
Yeah.
And he dreamed a dream of being an artist, said, I'm going to be an artist. I am an artist. And I said, get your butt in here and put up your art. That's what you're going to do. And then he did. And now he then went to graduate school. He's represented by a top gallery. And if the current circumstances change, he's on his way to Art Basel in Europe. What?
Yeah. And I think that's when societies and human beings, like when they stop dreaming, when they
Yeah.
stop, believing that there are avenues for possibilities, is when um, people lose hope.
And
They lose that fire.
and you don't ever not you don't want to be a part of someone not realizing their dream. if I can make division of whatever I have
Yeah.
that helps you, then let's do that. And so we also live in a very fertile, fecund community
Mm-hmm.
of dreamers, near dreamers, those who are about to be dreamers. And so the reflection in the mirror is quite fulsome because there's no paucity of. So that was a short poem, and then I have another one that's even shorter if there's time.
Yes, go for it.
Okay. It's called Dressed Up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in the section of the book that's called The Blues. Dressed up. I had my clothes clean, just like new. I put them on, but I still feels blue. I bought a new hat. Sure is fine. I wish I had back that old gal of mine. I got new shoes. They don't hurt my feet, but I ain't got nobody for to call me sweet. And it's called Dressed Up.
Oh.
Yeah. So Harold Bloom, whom I admire, because he said Shakespeare invented the human. But he did an anthology of Langston Hughes poems and said, you know, some of the scholarship around Mr. Hughes's poems are better than the poems themselves.
Mm.
Now I'm going to close this book
I
because,
disagree.
yeah, I'm not reading that.
No, no.
You can assess what I do in the most Oxfordian language you can imagine. Thank you. Or you cannot.
Yeah.
But the critique is never going to be better than the poem.
Amen.
Yeah, the poem jars the floor. The critique just looks what's on top of the surface. And I'm not saying just, because there's some great critiques. And Harold Bloom is a
Yeah.
great, but he missed the boat there.
You missed the boat. Well, Bob, it has been such a pleasure getting inside your writer brain. This is purely selfish. No, I'm so excited to share your wisdom and writing process and your
Wisdom.
Bobisms, as I call them. With
That's more Bobsism than wisdom, because you know, what I know to be true is I'm still learning at 65.
That's good.
Yeah.
You're still writing and you're still creating and you're still collaborating and
making cookies.
And making cookies. And I've had your pie. Oh, yes.
Which one? Sweet potato or pecan or apple?
I think it was pumpkin pie.
Oh, then with sweet potato. I don't make pumpkin.
Oh, then it was sweet potato pie. Okay. No, it was your apple pie.
Oh, well.
Made apple pie.
Yeah. Those three desserts. My mom didn't make apple pie much. She made sweet potato and pecan and peach cobbler. Have you ever had peach cobbler?
Yes, of course.
Oh, okay.
But probably not your peach cobbler or your mom's.
Well, as soon as we can, gather. Well, that's what I love, peach cobbler. And most Black folks love peach cobbler. What they love most about it is the crust. So that double crust pie, and they'd say, "Oh yeah. Oh no, not too many peaches, just some of the crust." And if it's a good crust.
Well, you're always welcome to leave a pie on my porch.
Yes, ma'am. Then I will.
So thank you for nurturing us with your words and your company, and keep writing, because we want to keep hearing what you have to say.
Well, thank you for asking. And you do the same.
Deal. All right.
Okay.